Welcome, everybody, back to another day of the 31 Days of Popcornween here on Burnt Popcorn. I'm Dr. Till, and today I get to tell you about another movie, and the one I picked is a 1997 Canadian sci-fi horror classic known as Cube. Considered to be one of the most creative and unique sci-fi horror movies of the last 25 years, Cube takes a very deep dive into survivalism and the human psyche by pitting 7 strangers in a mysterious cubed room with hatches on every face and no idea of how they got there or how they're going to get out. Cube was the creative child of Canadian filmmaker Vincenzo Natali in the early 90s. He was a storyboard artist who came up with the idea of setting an entire movie in hell. But he wasn't confident in getting financing, so over time he reduced the idea down to a single room. And then came the idea of changing the panels and making these rooms interconnected so that he could reuse the same room over and over again. Some think that he got the idea from Hitchcock's Lifeboat. I mean, maybe. Hitchcock was very known for coming up with new creative ways to tell terrifying and grisly stories. In 1996, he created the short film Elevated, starring Stargate Atlantis star David Hewlett. All took place on an elevator, basically as a means of pitching how they might shoot such a confined and single location idea. It also played a lot on the ideas of paranoia and survival instincts and how survival instincts might take over one's reasoning and cause them to do horrible things. Cube was filmed in Toronto for about $350,000. Yeah, at the time that'd probably be like $375 Canadian. And 50% of the crew, apparently, according to Wikipedia, and I'm just taking this from Wikipedia here, so take that with a grain of salt. 50% of the crew pretty much donated half their services. The effects house that did the CGI for Cube also donated their work as kind of just a demo for other people in the industry and as a good faith donation to the Canadian film thing. Cube is definitely one of those movies that you can consider a labor of love. A lot of people put time and effort, and in case of Vincenzo Natali, put almost a decade into just making this movie. And it really shows through in the final product. The entire cast is giving it their all. It's what you'd call an actor's delight. The entire script is just rife with dialogue that's teeming with tension and conflict. And for what little we learn about the characters, you actually know everything you need to know to see where these people are coming from. Things that are said lead to things that aren't said. They give you conclusions about certain people that might make them, more or less on your good side as a viewer. And this is a reason why I think The Cube has been, for decades now, a underrated indie classic that a lot of people haven't watched. And I know this is the 31 Days of Popcornween, and it's supposed to be a horror movie. This isn't really one of those movies that has a lot of jump scares and super gory things. There's a little bit of gore here, a little bit of scares there, but most of it's a psychological ride. It's a atmosphere, a tension, the fear of the unknown, the fear of what you do know, and all of it gets explored very deeply throughout all these characters. And coming up, this is going to be a little bit different from our other videos. I'm going to actually give you a complete breakdown of the plot of Cube, because this is a movie that I think more people need to see. And I feel like telling people the premise alone isn't enough. I need to give you a deep dive into what actually happens in this movie, because it's got 2 sequels. Now, the third one's not the greatest, but the second sequel builds on the ideas presented in Cube and takes them in a completely different direction that's very interesting. Even without the sequels, this movie is a fascinating case study in what can be done with a single room and a group of really great, talented actors. Now, a lot of these actors you're not going to recognize. You might recognize one, and he's the only one who really made it to any kind of notoriety past this, which just shows how much actual talent is out there that isn't getting scooped up by Hollywood and turned into the next whatever. Now, I'm going to tell you this story beat by beat coming up in the next 15 minutes. Now, if you don't want to see all that, you don't want the spoilers, stop here, go watch the movie, come back, and go along for the ride with me. But if you have seen this movie, let's take a little trip down memory road and let me tell you the story of Cube.
Does anybody remember how they got here?
Pierogies.
The film begins with a man named Alderson awakening in a room that has hatches on every face. It's very industrial looking with high-tech plates all over the wall and hatches that kind of look like just squared, submarine hatches, I guess. And he immediately opens one and decides to go through the hatch and is greeted with a loud thud, and then his body falls into cubes. Later, Paul W.S. Anderson stole it for Resident Evil. I kind of felt a little cheated when I learned that Resident Evil scene that I liked as a 15-year-old boy was just completely snatched from an even better movie that didn't have a shit plot to it. The film then takes us to our main cast of characters. Quentin's the first one to wake up, a tall, strong police officer, doesn't know how he got in this place. He meets a young lady and a fan favorite of people who love Stargate Atlantis. That's right, Dr. Rodney McKay is in the cube. The strangers meet up and decide it's time for them to find a way out of this mysterious cube. And along the way, they find a French guy that goes by the name of Ren, who has apparently escaped 7 maximum security prisons. And so he is very confident finding his way out and is using them as, shoe carriers. Because he uses the boots they've all been given as a means of springing and detecting traps.
The only reason I dragged you this far is because I need your boots.
Unfortunately for Mr. Wren, his arrogance gets the better of him and he gets sprayed in the face by a chemical mace. And it just melts the whole. If his life was a movie, it should have been called Face Off, because he did not have a face after that. Everyone freaks out at Ren's death, and the women especially start freaking out, and they think they are for some reason being punished. The fellows, however, have a different theory. They think it's some sort of conspiracy, or perhaps, as Quentin points out, a sick game for a rich person. And this kind of conversation permeates the entire movie. It's a movie entirely about paranoia, about survival, about what the person next to you is willing to do to get through that next cube and possibly home. All the things Ren said about being an escape artist started making Quentin think. Why them? And it starts to occur to him in the movie that they may all be there for a purpose. He starts questioning all of them, finding out where they came from, what they did. He learns that Levin, the young girl, is a mathematician student at college. Holloway, the older lady, is a doctor. Worth, David Hewlett, just works in an office, apparently. And Quentin himself is a cop. And so they start trying to figure out why them. And over the course of this, they come to Levin comes to the realization about the numbers.
149. Prime numbers. I can't believe I didn't see it before. It seems like if any of these numbers are prime, then the room is trapped.
There's in the hatches, each hatch has a little serial number stamped in the metal. And she figures out all the rooms that have been trapped had a prime number, or were a prime number. And so they start using this as a method to traverse their way through the maze, trying to find their way out. And for a while, it works out for them pretty well, till they reach a bit of a dead end, which forces them to go to the top hatch in the ceiling. When Quentin climbs up there, a mentally handicapped person falls out on him. Holloway, the kind-hearted doctor, convinces Quentin they need to take this man along with them, otherwise it would be completely inhumane and cruel to leave him to his fate in this cube. They argue along the way about who built the thing, why. Quentin's got one idea, Holloway's got another. Both think the other's stupid. Do you think these guys are on Twitter? Their prime theory starts breaking down when they enter a non-prime room, and Quentin, who went first, nearly loses a leg.
Stop! In front of you!
When he's escaping, let's just say tensions get a little hot.
I don't know what happened. It wasn't prime.
Quentin, hold still!
Somebody stop that racket!
Worth!
And during it all, it comes out that Worth actually built the exterior shell for the cube. What? Now, Worth's revelation really sets off Holloway's schizo posting side. She just starts going hard in the paint about the industrial military complex and all the CIA. Basically everything you'd see on TikTok conspiracy posters channel these days.
It's all the same machine, right? The Pentagon, multinational corporations, the police. Like, you do one little job. You build a widget in Saskatoon, and the next thing you know, it's 2 miles under the desert, the essential component of a death machine.
And Worth has to break some bad news to her. There's nobody at the top. This project might as well not even exist. Through the interrogating of Worth, Levin realizes something. She starts quickly calculating shit on the walls with her little button, and she figures out the numbers aren't actually just a serial number, but they're 3D coordinates within a greater cube, and she uses them to decipher where they are inside the cube. And they begin coming up with a plan. They're gonna make it to the outer edge and find a way out. But as they go along, they kind of hit a snag. Their coordinates stop making sense. They find a cube whose coordinates shouldn't exist. It seems to exist outside the size of the cube. They don't know what to do with that. And they continue on and they come to a voice-activated trap, and this leads to a very tense sequence where they all very quietly have to climb down the wall and get inside the next hatch without making a single sound. And while that, sounds hard enough as is, they also have a person with brain damage. And when Quentin is the last one crawling in through the hatch, Kazan, the brain damaged man, lets out a little something that almost gets Quentin killed. And Quentin quickly retaliates.
You fucking fuck!
That's enough!
He's a trap!
And here's where we start seeing the first cracks start to form in Quentin. He thinks Kazan is a trap sent here by the guys who built the cube as some sort of diversion, a subverter, or even a saboteur. And him and Holloway go to blows for it. And, well, Quentin smacks the holy shit out of her.
All that bottled up anger. And a thing for young girls.
They find their way to the outer cube. They open the hatch and all they see is blackness. They look and there's nowhere to hold on. All the cubes are bladed and like sheared metal, nothing to grip onto. So they come up with the idea of tying all their clothes together to form a rope. And one of them will swing out to the outer shell and see if they can find a way to get everyone across. Quentin wants to be the one, but he's too heavy. So Holloway volunteers. Scorn. She's trying to prove herself or something. She gets out. She tries to swing over and touch the wall, but there's nothing. And then they lose grip of the rope. It starts sliding. Quentin quickly grabs her hand. Rather than pulling up, he looks her in the eye and lets her go. And Holloway falls to her death. Quentin recommends they all take a breather and they all lay down for a nap. While everyone's out, Quentin grabs Levin and takes off into the next cube, leaving Worth and Kazan behind. Levin realizes very quickly that Quentin let Holloway die. But Quentin tries to convince her it's not about that, it's about survival. It's about trying to get out of this maze, and only they are the ones who can get out. Worth suddenly appears and attacks Quentin, knocking him off 11. But then Quentin just beats the ever-loving shit out of Worth again. And, uses Worth to basically test whether or not the next cube is safe. Just tosses him down from the bottom hatch. Down there, he just hears Worth start laughing hysterically. When they get down there, they discover they're back in the cube with Rin's body. His faceless body at that. And that's when Quentin really starts to fucking crack. Amidst all the chaos and tension and infighting, the group learns two new crucial pieces of information. One, that the cubes are in fact moving. The rumbling they heard while traveling through the cubes was actually the individual cubes sliding to new locations. Which means the cube they found that didn't fit, that seemed like it was outside of the cube, is actually the bridge to the exit. And Levin figures out where it's going to be and how long they have to get there. But that leads to the next problem and the next piece of information. The numbers they thought that were prime, that led to traps, aren't actually prime, but powers are prime. And Levin, while being a mathematical genius, cannot calculate that shit in her head. But that's where Kazan steps in. While brain damaged and almost nonverbal, he can calculate these astronomical numbers instantaneously, giving them the answers to which cubes are safe and which are not. But that leads with one last problem. Quentin, he's a threat. So Worth quickly acts and gets the upper hand on him and tosses him down to a lower cube, knocking him unconscious. Kaz and Levin and Worth quickly escape through the next cube, assuming that Quentin's gonna be hot on the trail. While they hit some obstacles along the way, even get separated, they find their way to the bridge cube and find the hatch to the exit. They open it and are met by a blinding white light, but just as they're about to leave, Worth doesn't want to go. Says he has nothing to live for. He's got nothing out there. Levin doesn't like this, obviously. But while she's trying to convince him to change his mind, Quentin shows up and stabs her through the stomach and kills her. And then he stabs Worth right in the stomach. And while he's trying to stop Kazan from exiting the cube, Worth grabs a hold of his legs till the cube can shift and smears him along the wall. Worth dies next to Levin, but Kazan gets to exit, walking off into the white light. And that's the end of the movie. It's a great fucking movie. If you haven't seen this, I don't know where you've been hiding. It's a cult classic. It's on Prime right now. And weirdly enough, there's even like a Japanese remake. I haven't watched it yet, but everywhere I look says it's terrible. So, can't wait to see that. But as one of our 31 days of Popcornween, this is a movie that I would highly recommend. It really messes with your emotions, gives you a very claustrophobic experience, and it really plays on the paranoia of human beings trapped in a confined space. I can't recommend it any higher. Like, it's a great movie. It's one of the best low-budget movies you'll ever see. So go check it out, enjoy it, and we'll see you next time on the next 31 days of Popcornween. I don't have a thunder sound effect handy. There it is.